Hi everyone, good morning and welcome to today's brush party and happy Halloween for those of you who are celebrating. So before we get started, I just want to remind you guys of some of the stuff you're going to need to have with you to do this class. So what we need is, we are going to need a nice fresh pot of clean water. You're going to need your palettes. Now, I have already popped some paint on my palette because my bottles are a little bit, they make a bit of a funny noise when I pull my paints out. So I've already put my paints on, but don't worry, I will talk you through the we're going to need in a little while. Just make sure you've got yourselves a palette. Mine is a paper plate, but you guys can use anything you've got handy. You could use a plate from your kitchen. You can always wrap it in cling film as well if you don't want to spend ages cleaning up, but the paint does come off really, really easily, so don't worry. I have also got my canvas. Now, my canvas is sat in the portrait position, but you guys don't have to have your painting this way round. You can actually have it whichever way round you would like. You might even have a square canvas or board that you're painting on. That is absolutely fine because this painting kind of works any way around, and you can do as many or as few cats or spiders as you would like. So you can really play around. Maybe there are 3 of you in your family, so you could have like 3 cats of all different sizes. So if you turn your canvas around this way, you could have like 3 cats up there. You can have loads of fun with it. So don't feel like yours has to be exactly the same as mine. And the same goes for the colours as well. Your background doesn't have to be orange. There are so many colours that we associate with Halloween. So it could be purple, it could be green, you could have it blue, any of your favourite colours you can use for that background. I highly recommend pink because it's my favorite, one of my favorite colors. Pink and green are my favorite colors. But like I say, you can use any color you would like to. So I've also got my brushes. Now I am using my brush party brushes. And we have 3 brushes that we use for all of our classes. So we've got our big one and our 2 little ones. Now, as long as you've got something nice and big for the background, it doesn't have to be the same shape as mine. That is not essential because you can honestly use any brush as long as it's nice and big for covering that background. That's all that you need. So even if yours is maybe this shape, like a round one, that is absolutely fine. Just make sure, like I say, it's nice and big for covering that whole background and you'll be fine. The other 2 brushes I have are my 2 little ones. So I've got my 3/8 brush, which is, it's got that angled top, we call it cropped, and it's also flat. You don't have to have one of these. This is really handy for doing things like the spider web because you can do really good lines with this brush. But you don't have to have one because all the detail of this whole painting you can do with this little guy. This is what we call the number 6 brush. And all it is small, round and pointy. As long as you've got any kind of brush that's small, round and pointy for doing those details, you will be absolutely fine. So just make sure you've got something for detailing and you will be good to go. So before we start, I also just want to remind you guys that acrylic paint stains your clothes. It also stains carpets and curtains and sofas. So please be really, really careful when you're painting. I've got my overalls and my apron on just to be on the safe side because I am super look how messy my apron is. I am super, super messy. So please do be very careful. The other thing I've got as well is I've got my napkins. I always have some napkins on hand, just in case of any spillages and messes. So you might want to have some napkins. They're also really handy for like drying your brushes and stuff. So definitely worth having some of those. Finally, before we start, I just want to remind you guys that we have got our live chat feature. Now that is there, I think it's that side of your screen. That is there for you guys. If you have any questions, if you just want to say hi, if you want me to go back over something or explain something a little bit differently for you, please do not hesitate to ask. I am here to help. You can also pause and rewind as much of this video as you would like to. So you can always go back over anything you think you might have missed. You could always do another painting later on and go back and rewatch it. Loads of options so that none of you feel like you've got to keep up. Don't worry about painting at the same time as me. You might need to wait for your backgrounds to dry a little bit. Just click pause and you can wait until you are ready to go. So no need to rush and no need to get stressed. The important thing is that you enjoy yourself because this is a super fun painting to do. So it's 11 o'clock, which means we can get started. So a very warm welcome to you today. I don't know about you guys, but we have got a big storm raging outside. So it's pretty dark and it's very rainy and windy. So I'm very happy to be sat inside painting with you guys instead. My name is September, just like the month, and I am going to be talking you through our Scaredy cat painting today. And I'm so excited because I love cats. They're so cute. I've got 2 cats, but they live at home with my parents and I don't get to see them very often. So I'm very excited to be painting a cat. Now, as I was saying before, you guys do not have to do any of the same colours as me. If you have your very own pet cat, you could do the cat the same colour as your cat, rather than doing it black. You might have a ginger cat. I love ginger cats. So you could do like an orange cat and change the colour of your background. You could do like a tortoiseshell coloured cat. You could do a black and white cat. You can have so much fun playing around with your colours and making this painting all your own. So speaking of colours, I'm going to talk you through the colours I am going to be using to recreate this version of the painting. But like I say, don't feel like you have to do any of the same colours as me. So today I am going to be using yellow and red because that's what we use to make our orange background. I'm also going to be using quite a lot of black to do my cat. My black paint has got a little hair in it. I think it's one of my little dog's hairs. They get everywhere. And I've also got some white, and we use that white for making our background quite nice and pale so that our cat and our spider and our spiderweb stand out really nice and brightly. I also use that white to make myself a grey for our little fence that we have along the bottom. So as long as you've got some yellow and red for that background, some black and some white, you'll be absolutely fine. Now, you may want to add a teeny tiny bit of blue onto your palette. And the reason we use a teeny tiny bit of blue is just to do the green for our cat's eyes. That's all we need it for. So you might just want a really tiny bit. You don't need a lot. I'm going to pop a teeny little blob of blue on there. There we go. It's a bit of a farty sounding bottle, so only a tiny bit. So there we go. I've just added a really tiny little bit of blue just so I can do those cat's eyes. So as I said before, we've got our canvas in that portrait position, which means long edges at the sides, short edges at the top and bottom. But again, you can do this painting any way around you would like. You can do as many cats as you like. I reckon we should just have loads of cats. That would look really cool. I've got my fresh pot of clean water. And then I've got those 3 Brush Party brushes. And like I said before, all you need to do is make sure you've got one nice big brush and some nice small brushes for doing detailing, and you'll be absolutely fine. Mine are the 3/8 brush and the number 6 brush. So a small flat angled brush and a small pointy brush. But all you really need is a small pointy brush for doing those details, and you'll be absolutely fine. And that is everything you need to know before we get started. So feel free to use that live chat feature. Make sure you're wearing something that you don't mind getting paint on, because it does stain. It does come off skin and hair really easily though, so don't worry too much about getting it on your skin. Just make sure you don't get it on your clothes and we will be fine. And now we are ready to start. So let us begin. And we are going to start with our big brush because we want to do that whole background before we do anything else. So I've got my big brush, and what we're going to do is we're going to start by popping our brush into our pot of water, because you want to make sure your paints are nice and smooth for painting. If they're too dry or too sticky, they don't really spread out very well. And especially when it comes to your background, you want to make sure your paints flow really nicely across your canvas. So we take our big brush and we're going to pop it into our pot of water, give it a little bit of a wiggle around in there. And then I'm going to scrape my brush on the edge of my pot of water, because we want to make sure we don't have loads of water clogging up our brush, because that's when you get drips, and drips are a bit of a pickle to deal with. So scrape off your excess water. And what we want to do is we want to start with a really lovely pale yellow colour. So what I do is I take some of my white paint, a nice big dollop of white paint, and I'm just going to move it over towards my yellow, because then what I'm going to do, pick up a bit more water on my brush, and I'm going to stir a tiny bit of my yellow into my white. So I've got a really lovely, super pale yellow colour. And what we want to do is we want to start by finding a spot on our canvas, which is about a third of the way down. Now, this is art, not maths, so it doesn't have to be exact. But what we want to do is we want to find a spot. So I have to stand up because I'm a little bit short for this. But we want to find a spot about a third of the way down our canvas in the middle and just leave a little marker. So if I lean that forwards a bit so you guys can see it a bit better, I've left just a little blob of my super pale yellow colour. So find your spot that's about a third of the way down and leave yourself a little mark. And then what we want to do is we want to add a bit more water into our pale yellow. So what I've done is I've picked up a brush load of water, and instead of scraping it off on my pot, what I do is I take my brush load of water and then I stir it really well into my paint. And what it does is it just helps make everything move around and be super smooth so we can spread it all over our canvas. So once you've added a bit of water into your pale yellow, what we can do is we can start to build up our background. So we take our pale yellow, and where we've left ourselves that little marker about a third of the way down our canvas, what we want to do, place your brush onto the canvas, and we're just going to rotate the brush in a circle. So we just want to gradually make that pale yellow circle bigger and bigger. And this is the bit of the background that's going to be behind our cat's head. Can you see it's a bit lighter behind the cat, and then it gradually gets darker? And that's what we're doing. We're starting with the lightest bit of the painting. So behind the cat's head, we just make a really nice, quite a big circle of pale yellow. And the best way to do it is literally press your brush onto the canvas. Don't lift it off. Just work it around in a nice big circle. And don't worry about making it perfectly round, because we're going to paint over this in a second anyway, so it does not matter. As long as we've just got a bit of a circle shape going on, that's all that is important. Because what we do next is we pop that brush back in our water, scrape off some of the excess, remember, so we don't get drips. And what we're going to do is we are going to pick up on our brushes a really tiny bit of red, really tiny bit of red, like this, really tiny. And I'm just going to give that a bit of a mix into my pale yellow. So we get this super pale, ever so slightly orangey colour, but we don't want it too orange just yet. So give it a good stir around again. So we've got this slightly orangey colour. And what we're going to do is we're going to take that big brush and we're going to draw a circle all the way around our pale yellow circle, just like that. So we've got super pale in the middle and then that light orange colour around the edge. And then what we do is we just carry on by pressing our brush onto the canvas, working around in a circle, and we're actually going to work our way back into the middle. And what this does is it mixes, oh, I've got a bit of a drip there. My brush was a little bit too wet. But what this does is it blends our colours together. So our really light yellow and our really light orange gradually mix. So we get this really beautiful blended circle in the middle. Does that make sense for you guys? Because what we're going to do is we're going to do this all the way out. So we're going to make it more orange as we go. And each time we go round the outside and then we brush all the way back into the middle, always keeping our brush on our canvas so that our colours blend together really beautifully and we get this amazing, streaky, orangey background that's going to look really funky. Now, if you're using a different colour, so if you're using maybe a purple or a pink or a green or whatever colour you're doing in the background, all you need to do is exactly what we're doing with our oranges. You start really light, lots of white in the middle, and gradually get darker as we go out. That's all you need to worry about. So what we're going to do now is we're going to add a little bit more red into our super pale orange. So tiny bit, remember, really tiny bits at a time. Give that a stir in, and you could always add a bit more yellow as well to make a bit of a stronger colour. There we go. So it's going to be a little bit different again. And then what we do is we go around the outside of our circle. There we go. So I've gone all the way around the outside, and then I press my brush onto my canvas and I start to work my brush back into the middle. And I don't press too hard. I'm quite light as I come back into the middle, and then come around the outside again. And then you can start to build up that circle even bigger around the outside. And as you'll see, what's happening is all our colours are mixing together slightly on our canvas so that we get a beautiful blend of oranges. There we go. And the best way to do it is just to try and keep that brush always in contact with your canvas and just work your circle round and around. There we are. Okay, And now what we want is we want even more orange. So add a bit more yellow into your color. I just drag a little bit more yellow into there. And this time I'm going to add a bit more red. So I'm going to do it tiny bit by tiny bit. I don't want it to go too orange. I want to go gradually. So there we go. I've added a tiny bit more red. And I think I'm going to add just one tiny little bit more. So each time I'm just picking up a really small amount. There we go. And because we've got quite a lot of paint in here, I'm just going to add another brush load of water to keep everything moving nicely. So I'm adding a brush load of water, mixing it around so my paint's really nice and smooth. And then we can go around the outside again. So we're going to go around the edge of our circle, all the way around. And then we're going to do that same thing where we just work our way round our circle and start to bring that orange into the middle, and then we go back out again. And if it goes a bit streaky, that's actually awesome. It looks so cool when it's a bit streaky. Looks kind of a little bit psychedelic and funky if it's a bit streaky. Makes it look a bit more Halloweeny and cool. So don't worry about streaks, just make sure you've kind of blended your colours together a bit. And then what you can do is you can start building up that outside edge as well. So go around the outside with a bit more of your orangey coloured paint. But always keeping that circle shape going. Because what it does is it kind of makes us look at our cat more. It draws your eye towards that pale middle where our cat's face is going to go. There we are. And then I'm going to mix myself up even more orange. So I'm adding a bit more yellow into there. And then I'm going to add a little bit more red. Again, a little bit by little bit. It's super important to remember that. Tiny bit of orange. I'm going to add a really little bit more red just to make it a bit of a brighter orange because we want to start making this super bright now. Tiny bit more red. Really tiny bits at a time. Give it a super good stir around. And then again, I'm going to add a little bit of water just to keep it all nice and smooth. And we're going to come around the outside with our new orange colour. There we go. So I've gone all around the outside. And then I'm going to do the same thing where I gradually start to brush around that edge and gradually bring my orange colour in. So I'm not pressing very hard when I come towards the middle, so only a little bit of my colour is coming off my brush. And then I'm just working my way around the edge of my circle to spread out my colour a little bit. There we go. So it's looking quite streaky. There's quite a lot going on with our oranges, and that is perfect. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to stick with this orangey colour, and I'm just going to add another ring around the edge because I want a bit more of this lovely orange colour that I've got at the moment. And then we'll go a little bit darker again in a minute, but we just want to build up this circle a bit. So just going to come around the outside with more of my orange. And I'm still trying to keep my brush on my canvas quite a lot so my colours spread out really nicely. There we are. And now what we can do is we can mix ourselves up even more orange. So I've accidentally put a bit of red in here because my colour got a bit close to my red, but that's okay. So I'm going to add a bit more yellow, a bit more red, and make a super bright, super bold orange. Add a little bit of water in there to keep it all moving nicely. And then we're going to do the same thing again. So we're going to go all the way around that outside. And we're going to blend our colour in. So we use very little pressure on the brush, so we're really gentle and light with it. And we just start to blend our colour towards the middle by going really lightly, keeping that brush, trying to keep it always in contact with the canvas. There we go. And once you start to get to your edges, what we can now do is we can take this orange, and this is very important. So make sure you don't forget to do this, because otherwise, oh gosh, whoops, sorry, got a bit too much orange on my brush. I just noticed I had a bit of a gap there where there wasn't a lot of orange colour. So I'm just gonna add a little bit of my orange colour back in. Blend it back into the middle. Sorry, my colour kind of was looking a little bit not blended enough for my liking. There we go, that's a bit better. So now what we're going to do is we're going to use this orange colour that we've just mixed up, a nice dark orange, and we're going to paint our edges. Now we want to paint both the sides and the top. Don't worry about the bottom, but you need to make sure your edges are beautifully painted in orange, because when you hang these up on your wall, you want to make sure that you've got your edges complete, so that when you look at this on the wall, you'll always see the edges, and you want to make sure your edges look beautiful and neat. You don't want them to be have lots of rough brush strokes on them, because they look much better when they're painted. So I'm just going to work my way around the painting, and if your brush goes over the front slightly, just blend it in gently. And then I'll do that last edge, so this edge just here. And just make sure we've got all of our edges painted. But don't worry about the bottom, because we'll do that a bit later. There we are, edges painted, very important, because it makes it look super fantastic when it's hanging up on the wall. And then what we can do, I've run out of orange. I've used all my orange, so I'm going to mix a little bit more. I'm going to add my yellow, and then I'm gradually going to add in my red, so little bit by little bit. If you've run out of orange, just mix yourselves up some more, but remember to do it really gradually. You don't want too much red too quickly, because it will go really dark, and then you'll be there for ages adding all of your yellow back in. So little bit by little bit, there's tiny bits of red on my brush, stir them in. And then what we're going to do is we're going to finish off the top section, and then we'll start working at the bottom. So with my nice dark orange that we've been using, we're just going to fill in these top corners, still keeping our nice curvy brush strokes. And just fill in these top corners with our orange colour. Nice curvy brush strokes to carry on our beautiful circle shapes. There we are. Look how cool it's looking. How are you guys getting on? I hope you're all doing okay, because all we need to do now is we just need to finish off the bottom section of our circle as well. So carry on with your nice dark orange colour that you've mixed up. And what we do is we just carry on with our curvy circle shape. So we come underneath here, like we've been doing before, come around the bottom edge. And most importantly, just keep that beautiful curvy shape going. And then brush back into where you've already painted slightly, just like we did before, so your colours blend together. And then we're just going to fill in that whole bottom section. Still keeping our curve. And just coming all the way down to the bottom. Now my circle's looking a little bit wonky, but that's okay. That's not a problem. I'm just using nice long brush strokes to add in the rest of my curve and then just blending my colours around a little bit. There we go. So gradually just working my way all the way down to the bottom with my beautiful curvy brush strokes. And if your colours change a little bit as you're going, don't worry at all, because we want, like I said, we want it kind of streaky and funky with loads of different shades of orange going on. So I'm just coming down to the bottom edge. And as I say, don't worry about the very bottom, because we're going to have our fence over that. So we will do that in just a little moment. But first we want to finish off this background. There we are. And there we have our gorgeous, gorgeous background all ready for us to add our cats to. There we are. So just going over some of my blending to make sure my circle looks beautiful. So I'm just using my brush. I don't have any paint left on it. I'm just, because my paint's still a little bit wet, I'm just brushing back over some of it to make it blend a little bit better. There we are. Now we have our beautiful, beautiful, streaky orange background ready for our cat face, which is very exciting. So I'm going to give you guys a little moment and make sure you have all got your background sorted. I'm just going to use a slightly wet brush and just brush back into some of my background and just blend out some of my colours a little bit more, because I got a bit carried away. So some of my light orange has kind of disappeared. So I'm just using a clean brush with no paint on it. I've got a tiny bit of water on it, but not too much. And I'm just going back over some of my middle circle section to make it a bit brighter. While I just give you guys a moment to make sure you've all got your background sorted. There we go. Okay, and once we've done that, it is time to start painting our cats. I'm so excited. So like I said, I'm going to give you guys a moment because I know that's a lot to do. All of that background is a lot. So I'll give you guys a moment and then I'll talk you through the cat. And the cat's super fun. So it's a really nice thing to do after the background, because the backgrounds can be a little bit tricky. When you have to do lots of blending, they can be quite tricky. So then we have a lovely time painting our cat and it makes it much more fun. Much more fun. And something that's really good to do as well, especially now we've done our backgrounds, is to get a little photo of your picture so far, because once we add the cat, the whole thing changes so much. So it's a really good idea to take a photo now and then have another photo at the end, and you can see how much your painting changes. And then you can share some photos with us and we can see how you've got on. Because you guys are the first ones to do this painting. This is our first Scaredy Cat Halloween painting for this year. So we would love to see how you guys have got on. And what you can do as well is just make sure, because we don't need our big brushes right now. We'll use them again in a minute, but we don't need them right now. So it's definitely a good time to give your big brush a really good rinse off, give it a really good clean, so that it's ready for the next time we need it. because for the next section, we're going to use one of our small brushes. Now, I quite like to use my small angled brush for this, but you guys can use whichever brush you would like. And we're going to be using black paint because we need to map in our cat. We're going to sketch him in, and then we'll just use our big brush to fill him in. But first, we need to sketch him in. So make sure you add a bit of water to whichever little brush you were using. And then you want to add a bit of water into your black paint just to make sure it's nice and smooth for sketching in your cat. Now, what we do is we do the cat first and then we do the fence afterwards, so that it doesn't matter how messy the bottom of our cat is, because we're going to put our fence over the top and you won't see it at all. So what we do is we actually start with the cat's neck, because we want our cat's neck to be about halfway down the canvas. And then we can build up the rest of the cat based on the neck. So what we do for the cat, for the neck, sorry, I'm using my little angled brush, but like I say, you guys can use a small pointy brush too. That is absolutely fine. If you're using your small angled brush, make sure you don't have loads of paint hanging on it. You're going to scrape it off and make sure it's quite empty of paint, otherwise it gets a bit too clogged up. And make sure when you're painting, we're going to be painting down, so we're going to have our short bristles at the bottom. So I'm holding my brush this way up. And what we want to do is we want to find a spot that's about in the middle, bang splat in the middle of our painting. So hopefully it will be just below where we did our nice light orange colour. And all you need are two little lines like this, quite close together, for our cat neck. Now, they're not very long, but it doesn't matter how long they are because we're going to paint over them. For now, this is just to map in our cat. So when we put in the body, it will probably cover up a lot of that neck. So don't worry if you make the lines really long. You can make them come all the way up to here if you want to. And then when we add the cat's face, you won't be able to see them. So don't worry about how big the lines are. Just make sure you've got two little lines, bang splat in the middle of your canvas, so that we can see where our cat's neck is going to go. And then once you've added those two little lines for the neck, we can start to add in the body. So what we do, still, if you're using your small angled brush, we've still got our short bristles at the bottom, so we're holding it this way up. And what we're going to do is we're going to come down, and then we want to curve our cat out. We want quite a nice big fat cat. So I curve down and out. And actually, I'm going to make it a little bit fatter, so I'm going to make him come out even more. There we go. You want a nice big fat cat. There we are. So he kind of looks like a ball with a neck sticking out the top, and that's fine. For now, like I said, we're just building up our shape. So, and he doesn't need to be, you don't need to make sure he's equal on both sides. It doesn't need to be symmetrical because it's a cat. Cats aren't very symmetrical. And then once you've added that body shape, what we're going to do is we're going to add the face shape. Now for the face shape, we want an oval. So again, it doesn't have to be perfectly even. It doesn't have to be symmetrical. But what I do is I start at the bottom of the face with a big curved line. So I want a nice big curvy line like this. Nice big curved line that joins up with those little necklines that we made. And then you can add a nice big curve at the top. And don't forget, the top of his head is going to have a hat on. So don't worry too much about the top of the head. We just want him to have a nice big oval shaped head. There we are. And then what you can do is you can either use your big brush or your little brush. I'm going to use my big brush. And you just need to fill him in with black paint. So just using my big brush, I'm filling the whole shape that we've made with black paint. Now, my cat, as you can see, doesn't go all the way down to the bottom, because don't forget, we're going to have our nice fence along the bottom. So it doesn't need to go all the way down to the bottom. You just need to make sure he comes down past a quarter of the way. So if you imagine a quarter of the way up from the bottom, our cat needs to come down to at least there, and that's all we need. And then you just fill him in with black paint. There we go, our black cat. He doesn't look much like a cat at the moment, but he will do once we give him his tail and his whiskers. So I'm just going to neaten up my edges, because some of my edges are a little bit fuzzy. My paint wasn't quite wet enough, so it went a bit sticky and splodgy. There we go. And there we have one super cute black cat. Now, before we give him whiskers or a tail or a hat, what we want to do is we want to add his little fluffy beard in, because this makes him look super fluffy and cute. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our small brush, whichever small brush you would like to. I'm going to use my small angled brush again. And again, I'm going to use it with my short bristles pointing down. If you guys are using your small pointy brush, that is absolutely fine. And you just want to use the very tip of the brush. What we're going to do, still with our black paint, just pick up some black paint. Make sure if you're using a small angled brush, you scrape off some of that black paint so your brush isn't really full and clogged up. And what we're going to do, I'll move this a bit closer so you guys have a bit of a better view, is we're going to come down the side of his face with little flicky brush strokes. And just curve down the side of his face so he looks fluffy. And I'm just going to shut that door because there's lots of background noise going on. Hold on. So I'm going to come down the other side of his face, and I start about halfway down his cheeks. And then I just flick that brush and make his face look fluffy and cute. There we go. So I'll give you guys another little moment to make sure you've added your fluff to your cat, because a fluffy cat is super important. Although I am actually allergic to super fluffy cats, but it's okay because this one's only a painting. There we are. And once you've given him his fluffy little chin, what we want to do is we want to take our small brush, whichever small brush you're using, and we're going to map in his hat. So the way we do this is we start with a curvy line. And what you want to do, you want to make sure the hat is on top of is like on the cat's head. You don't want it floating over the top. You want it down on his head. So what we do is we start with our curvy line. And again, I'm going to use my small angled brush, but you guys can use your small pointy brush as well. And what we want to do, again, I'll bring it a bit closer, is you want to chop off the top of his head, which sounds a bit scary, but it's okay. So what we do is we start over on the far side of his head, and we're going to chop off his head about here and here. So his hat sits on his head. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go out to the side, curve down like that, and I'm going to take that line all the way across to the other little marker I made. Hold on, just ran out of paint on my brush. And curve up the other side like that. And that is going to be the brim of our witch's hat. And once we've got that line, what we do is we then join it up. So we come to that end point, curve it around, and curve around the other side as well. Like so. And this can kind of come to the top of the head. So that comes all the way across the top of the head and joins the ends of our curvy line. And again, you can fill all of this in with black paint. And this is the start of the hat. So I'm just going to make mine a bit longer on that side because mine is a bit short on that side. There we go. And then we need the triangle sticking out the top to make it a proper witch's hat, don't we? So we make a nice triangle and start your triangle down in your cat's head. So you want the triangle part to be the same width as your cat's head. So if you imagine a little line coming out the top of his head, about there, and one coming out the side of that bit of his head, about there. And what we do is we make ourselves a lovely curvy triangle like this. So a bit of a wonky curvy triangle. And we want it to go all the way where it meets up at the top. We want to add that lovely long pointy bit at the top, don't we? So we come nice curvy, almost looks like the shape of a wave, doesn't it? And then we come all the way out to the very edge of the canvas, like so. So we have a very long, pointy hat. And again, you can fill all of that in with black paint. So there we have our beautiful witch's hat on our little cat's head. And what I do is I just make it get gradually fatter as we get closer to our cat's head. And it's looking like a pretty spooky witch's hat, that I like it. Just going to bring this bit of the hat down a tiny little bit more so it matches the other side a bit better. There we go. And once we've done that, all we need to do now is give him his whiskers and his tail. So we will wait just a moment, make sure everyone's ready for the next bit, because adding the tail is super, super fun. Because you can make the tail as curly whirly as you like. So for this, I use my small pointy brush because this brush is super, super handy for doing curly lines, and we want super curly tail and whiskers. So make sure your little brush is nice and damp so that you're ready for painting. Make sure you mix that water into your black paint. And what we're going to do is we're going to start at the body on the left-hand side, or you can do it on the right-hand side if you would prefer. It's entirely up to you. And what you want to do is you want to start about a quarter of the way up from his bottom. So where the bottom of your cat is, come up a little bit, because we want to make sure our tail is above the line of our fence. Can you see? I've got my fence and then the tail's above it. And the beauty is when we put the fence in, you can put the fence wherever it needs to go to make sure you can see your cat. That's why we add it in at the end. So you want to come up a little bit and just start by drawing in your cat's tail. So I've just done one line. I haven't made a nice big fat tail yet. I've just done a little line to start off with so I can see where my cat's tail is going to go. And then once you've mapped it in, you've drawn as much curly whirly business as you would like. What you can then do is you can go back over it and start to make it nice and thin at the very end. So where it curls around, we want it nice and thin. And then what we do is we gradually make it fatter and fatter the closer we get to the cat's body. So we want nice big fat tail at the bottom and nice thin pointy tail at the tip. So what I do is I just come around my curve and I gradually press more and more on my brush, because what it does is it widens out my bristles and gives me a nice fat line for my cat's tail. And then we can make it fatter and fatter as we come down, like so. So I'm just really gradually building it up. And it's always good to do it little bit by little bit so that you've got a bit more control over your brush and you can be a bit more careful about making your shapes. There we go, a super curly cat tail, look at that. So I've just been looking at my picture and I've noticed that my fur comes up quite a long way on this side and not very far on that side. So I'm just going to, while you guys are doing your tails, just going to pop a little bit more fur on my cat's face to even him up a little bit. Him or her, it might be a girl cat, I don't know. A lady cat or a tom cat. That's a bit better, isn't it? It looks a little bit more even now. Okay, so once you've got your tail, what we need to do is we need to make the tail a little bit fluffy as well. So can you guys see on this picture where I've got the fluffy bits of the tail? Now we don't need to make the whole tail fluffy, don't worry. We just need a little bit of fluff at the very base of the tail to make him look like he's super cute and fluffy. So I'm going to go back to my small angled brush. And you guys, all you need to do is use exactly the same brush you used when you did the fluff around his face. We're doing exactly the same thing. We take that brush, and this time, instead of brushing down, we want to brush up a bit. So we want to follow the tail. So I'm bringing it a bit closer so you guys can see. This time I've got my short bristles at the top. And what we do is we just work our way along the tail ever so slightly. Just add a couple of really tiny little flicky lines to make the tail look just that little bit fluffy. And then we do the same along the bottom edge as well. And I'm just flicking those little brush strokes up the tail. There we are. So as I say, we don't need to go up the whole thing. We just want these little fluffy bits just towards the bottom bit of the tail to make him look super cute and fluffy. So what I've done is I've kind of gone up a little bit, and then when it starts to curl round, I've stopped. There we are. So can you see my little bits of fluff? Just tiny little flicky lines coming out the base of the tail to make him look super fluffy. He does look very cute. I'm quite pleased. There we go. And the last thing we need to do in just a moment when everyone's ready is we can start to add in those whiskers. So give you guys another little moment, make sure you are all ready for the next bit of the painting, and then we can add those whiskers. So for the whiskers, I'm going to go back to using my small pointy brush because that one was really good for doing the curl of my tail, and I want quite curly whirly whiskers as well. So you can have as many or as few whiskers as you would like. It does not matter at all. But just like when we did the tail, we're going to start quite small and then we can build them up afterwards. So picking up my black paint on my small pointy brush, and what I do is I twist my brush as I pull it out of my palette, twist it around. What it does is it brings it back to that really nice pointy tip so that I can do very small little brush strokes. And what we want is we want probably the same number of whiskers on both sides. So I'll start over on the right hand side and I'm going to come out and curl. And then I'm going to have another one that comes out, and this time I'm going to curl down. And then I'm going to have one more that curls down. And then on this side, I'm going to have one that comes out and curls up, one that comes out and curls down, and then I'm going to have another little one that comes out and curls up. And as you can see, I've kind of overlapped my tail a little bit, but that is fine. And then once you've mapped those in, you can use your little brush and you can just build them up a bit. So you can make them a little bit fatter so they stand out just that little bit more. There we go. And this little one here. And then that top one as well. So I'm just using my little pointy brush to just fatten these up a bit so they stand out really nicely. There we go. 3 whiskers on one side, and then I'm going to fatten up these whiskers over here as well. There we are. My whiskery little cat, look at that. How are you guys getting on? Do you all have whiskers on your cat? Are you still adding your whiskers? Don't worry, there is no rush. because what we need to do next is we need to add our spider web. This is very exciting. I like the spider web. So for the spider web, we add it in now because, again, when we then put our fence on, we can cut off the bottom of our spider web, and it just works really well doing it that way around. So what we're going to do is we're going to wait a little moment, make sure everybody's ready, and the last thing we do for the whole painting is the eyes and the nose, because we need all the rest of the painting to be nice and dry when we add those. So we'll do our spider web and our little spider creeping down, and then we will have our then we'll do our fence, and then we will do our eyes and our nose, our cute little heart-shaped nose. Very excited. So for the spider web, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to using my small angled brush, still with our black paint. Lots of black paint in this one, isn't there? And what you want to do, if you're using your small angled brush, you want to have your short bristles at the top, because this time we're painting up. And what we do is we start at the very bottom of the cat. So we want to start all the way down here, because the bottom of our spider web is going to disappear. So you don't need to worry too much about it. But what you need to do your spider web is you need to have lots of little lines coming up away from your cat. So using my little angled brush, I'm going to start down here, and you don't need to press very hard because we want this to be quite thin and wispy. So I'm going to start here, and I just drag my brush ever so lightly up to the side of my canvas. So I've just dragged it all the way up and off. And then I'm going to have another one that's going to come up and off the side. I'm going to have another bit that starts down there, comes a bit further up, and kind of fades out and stops. I have another bit that comes out and fades out and stops. And then I'm going to have another bit that comes out and fades out and stops. So can you see they all kind of start down at the bottom of my cat? I'm actually just going to make this line a little bit fatter so you can see it a bit better. There we go. And then you can actually have another one along the bottom there that comes out and stops. They don't have to be evenly spaced. They don't have to be really neat. They can all be different thicknesses. It's a spider web. It's meant to be super creepy and all weird. I don't like spider webs. When I go and walk with a dog, I always get them in my face, and I really don't like it. I'm going to have another one along the bottom there as well. And then what you do, once you've got all your lines going on, what you do is you add little curves that go across between them. And some of those curves will join up and some of them won't. So I've done a curve between my two lines, and then I go to the next two and I do a curve, and then I go to the next two and I do a curve, and then I'm going to come these two and I do a curvy line to join them up, and then I'm going to have a curvy line that goes into my cat. And then we'll come down a little bit and we'll add another curvy line and another curvy line. And we'll work our way through all our lines, adding these little curvy lines. And join them up to the cat. And then we can have one that comes up here, because that bit of spider web there that I added, that one just there, it's quite long. But we don't need to add another one down here. What we can do instead is maybe we could add a little extra one in here. Maybe we could add an extra little line in between those bits there. You can have a bit of a play around and make it look a little bit strange and a little bit spooky. And then you can have more of those curvy lines as well further down. So further into our spider web, more of those little curvy lines that join up with each other. And then you could have an extra couple of curvy lines that don't go all the way. And you can have extra couple of curvy lines much closer. And then maybe you could have even more line bits going on in the gaps, like that. There we go. And then I think one more lot of curvy lines right in the bottom bit. Like so. Then you could add an extra couple of curvy bits over here. You could have a big one that comes across there. You just want a lovely spooky spider web with lots of little curvy lines going on. Then once you've got your spider web, you need to add your spider. And we do that almost exactly the same way we've just done our spider web, but now you need your spider to drop down off the very tippy top of your witch's hat. So just like when you did your web, except this time we'll have our short bristles at the bottom because we're going to paint down. Make sure your brush isn't clogged up with paint, so your paint moves really nicely. You get a nice thin line, and what you do is you just come down the canvas and then stop. Because you don't want your spider right on his cobweb, he's coming down to his cobweb. So I've stopped just above the whiskers because my whiskers come out quite far. But on here, obviously I had a bit more space, so you could make your spider come down a little bit further. But you just want that little line coming all the way down from your hat that we're going to pop our spider on. And then we can add our little spider in. So for the spider, what you can do, there are two ways to paint a spider. You can use your little brush and build yourself up a spider, a circle, like a little oval shape. Or you could use your finger. Because your index finger, so the first one next to your thumb, is really good for doing a perfect spider body. So you can either use your little brush and make yourself your shape, or, now remember this is quite messy, so please be careful. You can get your black paint on your finger and you can blob your black paint at the bottom of the cobweb, just like that, and you get like a perfect spider body. So decide which way you want to do it, and you could always, if you don't like the shape you've ended up with from your finger, you could always go around it a little bit and just build it up if you want your spider to be a little bit bigger. There we go. So two ways you can do your spider. And then just using the tiny tip of your paintbrush, whichever paintbrush you're using, I'm going to use my small angled brush again. And I'm just going to use the very tips of the longest bristles. So I'm just using these little bits here. And what we need to do is we need him to have some legs. So I'm just going to give him, do you know how many legs spiders have got? It's 8. So they need to have 8 legs. So 4 on one side and 4 on the other side. And what you can do, if you're feeling particularly brave and like your spider's looking really good, what you can do is you can give him extra little bits of legs like he's got little knees. So you do your line and then you do a little line coming out the bottom as well. Just like that. So it looks like he's got little knees. That's a bit wonky. There we are. So we've got our spider, we've got our cobweb, and now what we need is we need our fence. So I'll give you guys a little moment. Make sure you've all got your spiders and your cobwebs and you're all ready for the fence. Because once we've done the fence, all that's left to do are our eyes and our nose. So we're going to focus on the fence for a little bit. And what we need to do is we need to draw it in and then we just outline it a little bit to make it stand out really nicely. So I'll give you guys a moment. Make sure you're all happy with your spiders and your cobwebs. Again, let me know if you've got any problems and I will help you. Oh. And for this, I'm going to use my big brush because we just want a nice big fence, and then we'll go around it afterwards. And the beauty of this is, if you have a look at mine, my fence is really wonky. I think the nice wonky fence makes it look kind of even spookier because it's a little bit like an abandoned fence. So what we're going to do is we're going to mix ourselves up a grey paint. And for this, we start with the white. Always start with your lightest colour. So I start with my white, take a little bit of my white, section it off slightly, and add a tiny bit of black, really tiny. Black is such a strong colour that it will turn your paint grey so quickly. Look at that, it's already gone grey. So just give that a really good stir around. And if you want, if you're feeling particularly arty today, you could add a tiny little bit of blue in there as well to make it like a blue-grey. It looks quite cool with blue on it because it just looks a bit more exciting than plain grey. But it's up to you. You don't have to add the blue into there. So I'm going to add a bit more white, tiny bit more black to make it a bit darker looking. And as you can see, it's kind of a blue-grey because I added a tiny little bit of blue. And then I'm just going to mix in a bit of water because we always want to keep our paints nice and smooth, remember? So brush load of water, mix it in. And then what we want to do is we want to be very careful about where we put our fence. And this is why we need to be quite careful, because what you need to do is you need to make sure your fence is going to cover up the bottom of your cat and some of your cobweb, but you don't want your tail to disappear. So you can make some of your fence posts different heights. And so what we do, I'll bring this closer again, is I start under the tail because then I know where my tail is going to be, so I know where the top of my fence needs to be. And what I do is I just do a bit of a line, and that's going to be a fence post. And then you can have another bit of line that's a bit lower down. It's up to you. It could be a bit higher. It could be a triangle rather than a flat bit. It's entirely up to you. But these are going to be our fence posts. So then you can have a bit that comes a bit higher, another bit that's quite high, then you can have a bit that's a bit lower, and then you could have another triangle bit, then you can have another flat bit like that. So all the bits of my fence are wibbly wobbly and wonky, so they don't have to be even and symmetrical and neat. You just need to make sure you've added in a couple of different bits along the way. And then what we do is we just start to fill in the bottom section of our canvas. So where those lines are that we've just added, we then just paint down to the bottom of the canvas with our grey paint. There we go. And then where your fence posts come a little bit higher, you just paint along those and down. And then down. And they'll kind of all merge together, and that's fine because don't forget we're going to add in some, we're going to add in the outlines as well. So these will stand out a bit better in a moment. But for now, we just need to fill them in with our blue-grey paint. There we are. And then flat one there that comes down. And then you can just fill all of this in. And it's quite good if you use your downward brush strokes because this helps make the shape and the texture of our fence because it's like a wooden tumble down fence. So we want that wood effect of long brush strokes going down to the bottom. There we go. And then once you've filled in that bottom section, what you need to do, and I remember I told you this ages ago, and we're coming back to do it finally, is you need to make sure you do the edge of your fences and you need to paint the bottom of your canvas as well. So let me just do those edges. There we are. Done my edges so they match my fence, and then I'm going to turn my canvas upside down quickly, and I'm just going to, well, for starters, I'm going to mix myself up a bit more grey because I've run out. Used up all my grey doing that. And I'm going to paint all along the bottom edge of my canvas as well, so that my fence carries on all the way around the bottom. There we go. And then I'm just going to make sure all my fence posts are standing out nicely, because some of them went a bit see-through. Didn't quite have enough paint to finish them all off. So I'm just going to go back over some of them, make sure they're nice and bold. And then we'll use our black paint to draw around them. And what you can do is, if you carry on with your big brush, if you mix yourself up a slightly darker grey, so if you've got your grey that you've done your fence post with, your blue grey, let me add a tiny bit of blue in there. There we go, your slightly blue grey that you've been doing your fence post with. If you add a tiny bit more black into there, just a really small amount, so it's ever so slightly darker, what you can do, add some water, so it's nice and smooth. And what you do is you take this nice dark grey, scrape a lot of it off your brush, because you don't want a lot of paint on there, so scrape quite a lot of it off. It's called dry brushing, so we get rid of most of the paint, so there's not a lot on there anymore. And what you can do is you can just drag your brush over the top of some of your light grey, and it makes it look like the grain in wood. So you know wood's got all those patterny bits in it, and you can sometimes see like the veins in the wood. That's what this does. So as you drag your brush down your fence post, or up your fence post, depending on which way up your picture is, you add in these kind of darker bits that look a bit like the grain of your wood, and they help make your, oh no, I've got grey paint at the top of my canvas. That was silly, wasn't it? Never mind. Never mind. What these do is they just add that little effect of wood into your fence. So I'm not brushing this over the whole thing, I'm just doing a couple of little brush strokes that make it look like the grain of my wood. So just a couple on each fence post, like that. So I get quite patchy bits of wood. And you can do it really dark if you want to, but I think it looks a bit better when it's a little bit lighter, it's a bit more subtle, I think. And then we will just wait a little moment for everyone to be done, and then we can draw around our fence posts and yeah, really define them and make them look even cooler. But make sure you've done those edges. Make sure you painted all the way along the bottom. It's very important, remember. And then I'm going to go back to my small angled brush for painting around my fence posts, but you guys can use whichever brush you have preferred using. And that's the thing, as you do more paintings, some brushes you will like and some brushes you won't like, and you'll find that you find some easier for doing certain things to others. So I find my angled brush easier for doing lines, but you guys might find it easier using a pointy brush. It's entirely down to personal preference. So use whichever brush you prefer. I'm going to use my small angled brush, as I said, and I'm going to use it with the short bristles at the bottom, because I'm going to be painting down, so my short bristles at the bottom, and I'm going to start by just outlining the fence posts. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come here and I'm just going to come down between those two fence posts. This does not need to be perfectly neat. We kind of want a higgledy-piggledy fence. So what I'm then going to do is I'm going to do this fence post, but I'm going to come at a bit of an angle. Then I'll come at a bit of an angle on that side as well, like so. And then I'll come straight down there, straight down there, like so. And then you can paint the tops as well. So that top's got a triangle. That top is straight across. That's straight across. And I'm not going around them perfectly. You can still see some of the grey on the outside as well. That's fine. They don't need to be super neat. It's supposed to be higgledy-piggledy and a little bit messy. And then I'll come across the top there. And I'll come across the top there. And add in that wonky triangle top there. And then I'll add in that bit there. There we go, our higgledy-piggledy fence. And you could add a little bit of black into it maybe to make it maybe look like a bit of a hole in your fence, or just drag your brush really lightly to make it look like some of the texture of the wood. It's entirely up to you. I'm just adding a little bit of black to add a bit more texture into my wood. So I'm just being really light, and because my grey paint is still a bit wet, kind of blends in quite nicely. Just makes it look a bit extra messy. So same brush, really light. So I'm not pressing very hard so that my paint comes out really thin and a bit messy. So it's a bit, if I bring it a bit closer, you can see it's a bit fuzzy, like there are no perfect brush strokes in there. That's the look we want. There we go. So now is another really good time to take a photo, because when we add the eyes and the nose, it brings the whole painting to life and just completely transforms it. So it's quite nice at this point to take a photo and then take another photo when you've added the eyes and the nose, and you get to see like the final step of your painting. And it's really lovely to see that, the change. So for the eyes and the nose, we're going to need green and pink, my two favourite colours. And I do these with my small pointy brush. The small pointy brush is the best one for this because we want beautiful curvy cat eyes. And it's kind of easier to do with your small pointy brush. But again, use whichever one you find easiest. So we want to start with our nose, because the nose helps us decide where the eyes are going to go. So for the nose, what you want is you want a little blob of white. Now, you don't have to do pink. You can do your cat's nose whatever colour you want, but I'm going to stick with that pink. So you start with white, and then you add a tiny little bit of red. Remember, go really gradually until you've got a colour you are happy with. So tiny bits of red, and mix yourselves up a beautiful pinky colour. And to make the heart shape, all you need to do, it's very simple. All you need to do, add a little bit of water into your paint. Don't worry if your water's a bit black. It won't have too much of an effect on the colour of your paint, so you don't need to worry. But what we do is we take our small pointy brush with our pink paint. I'll bring it a bit closer again so you guys have a better view. And what we're going to do is we're just going to press the brush onto the canvas. So you don't even need to do any brushing, it's just pressing the brush. So find a spot that's about the middle of your cat's face, and you just press at one angle, and then you press at the other angle, and it creates a little heart for you. So I've just pressed one way, and then gradually lift the brush off, and then press the other way, and gradually lift the brush off, and you get your little heart-shaped nose. And then what you can do is you can use the brush to just finish off the little pointy bottom of the heart. There we go. So you've got a gorgeous little cat heart. Little heart nose. There we are. I'll give you guys a moment because it takes a bit of practice, but once you get the technique of just pressing into the canvas, works perfectly. Perfectly. It's how we do petals as well. So if you do any of our other paintings, you might remember that technique from doing petals, but it also works for hearts. And then we need green for the eyes. So to make green, we use yellow and blue. Now I'm going to give you guys a sec. Make sure you've all got your cat noses on there. And then we will mix ourselves up our green for those cat's eyes. And we're going to use our small pointy brush for this as well. So Just wait for everyone to be ready. And then we can mix up a green. So just like with the pink, you start with your lightest color. That means yellow. So we're going to take a little bit of yellow. Now we need a bit more green because we want to make sure we've got enough for both of the eyes. Or you could do 2 different colored eyes. That would look really cool. That would look so cool. You could do 2 different colored eyes, but I'm just going to make plenty of green paint so I can do 2 of the same color because I need to do 2 green ones. So start with your yellow, then we're going to add a tiny bit of blue. Go really gradually with the blue because just like all the other dark colors, it will change the color of your paint so quickly. So I'm adding a little bit of blue and look how quickly that has made my paint go green, just that tiny bit of blue. And already I've got green. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to add in a bit of white. And the white is really important because what it does is it helps make our eyes stand out really brightly over the top of the black face. So it's very important to add a bit of white into your green color because it really helps your eye color stand out nice and brightly. There we go. So I've got a beautiful limey green color. I'm going to add a bit of water, but not too much because as I say, we want this to stand out quite nice and brightly. And then I'm twisting my brush again to get my brush back to a point because I'm using my small pointy brush, twisting it around to get it back to a nice pointy shape. And then we can add those cat's eyes. And we want them nice and big. We want nice and big, beautiful cat's eyes. So, sorry, I've got a really tickly nose today. So I keep tickling it. There we are. So I'll bring this a bit closer again so you guys can see. And I'm going to start over this side. And what I do is I just start with pointy curve up and pointy curve down like that. And don't worry, we'll add the black line in a second. So for now, just get that green on there. There we go. And then one on the other side as well. There we are. And so I'm going to make this one a little bit bigger so they're match a bit better. Because I think the one on the left-hand side is a bit bigger. So I'm just going to make this one a little bit bigger. They almost look like giant limes, don't they? Very lime-shaped eyes. There we go. My super cute, giant, limey cat's eyes. And while those are drying, we've got one more little bit to do before we add the black on the eyes. And the little thing we need to do requires some light grey paint, just a tiny bit. So you just take a little bit of white. And actually, we could use, no, we'll use orange instead of grey. It looks much better with orange. White. And if you've got any orange left, you can use that. Or just mix yourselves up a tiny little bit of orange. And then you want to add loads and loads of white. You only need, like I said, a very small amount of super pale orange. There we go. It's quite ready, but that's fine. As long as it's super pale. That's the important thing. Just a tiny, tiny little bit. And this is for a very important little step that you might not have noticed, but it makes a big difference. And what we do with this is we just highlight the bottom rim of the hat. Can you see on here? I've just got a tiny little bit of highlight. So, do you remember that line we added for our cat's hat? Doesn't matter if you can't see it anymore, we're just going to add it in anyway. So, imagine where the edge of the cat's hat is, and all you do is add a tiny little line. It doesn't need to go all the way across, in super pale orange. And it just makes that hat stand out that tiny little bit, and it looks fabulous. So use a very, very pale orange and just draw in the bottom edge of the hat where it touches our cat's face. So just along there. And it gives our cat, makes the hat look like it's sitting on top of his head. And once you've done that, all that's left to do is add in the black line for the cat's eyes, and you guys have completed the Scaredy cat. So get those small pointy brushes, clean all the limey green colour out with them, pick up that tiny little bit of black paint. Actually, you might want quite a lot of black paint on your brush for this bit. And all we do, we take our small pointy brush and we just draw in a line coming down the middle of the eye. Not all the way to the bottom, just from the top down to near the bottom on both sides. Like so. And there we have our Scaredy cat. You guys, you've finished it. You've done it. You've done your Scaredy cats. So once you've finished, you might need to wait for the green to dry just a little bit more before you add the black bit, because if your green paint's still a bit wet, the black bit might not show up very well, and that's fine. Just wait a couple of minutes for them to be completely dry, and then you can add the black sections. And the last and most important thing you need to do is sign your paintings, because these are your paintings. You've got to own them, so you definitely want to sign. So I sign with a little S in the corner because September is way too long to write out in full. So I take my little brush, pick up some black paint, and I'm just going to sign down here with an S. You guys could sign with a Sharpie if you want to. You could always sign the back of your canvas as well if you'd rather not sign the front, but make sure you sign it because you should be so, so proud of yourselves. And I cannot wait, if you guys would be so kind, I would love it if you would share some pictures of your cats so I can see them, because I would love to know how you have got on. So what you can do is you can share a picture on our social media. So you can share it on Facebook or on Instagram. On Facebook, all you need to do is just search for Brush Party or use the @ symbol. So you use @Brush Party, and you can create a new post and you can tag us, and then we will be able to see how you've got on with your cat. On Instagram, you can tag us, but it's @Brush Party UK. So you need to add the UK bit at the end, otherwise we won't see it. And then also you can, if you don't have social media, you can just email us and we still get to see your creations, because honestly, I would love to. So you can just send an email to info@brushparty.co.uk and we still get to see the pictures of your gorgeous little cats. And I am so excited to see them. So please, please, please share some photos. Guys, I hope you have had such a wonderful time. I have loved painting this with you. I told you I love painting the cats. So I really hope you've enjoyed it. Any issues, if you've got any questions, even after the class is finished, you can contact us on our social media or you can email us. And that email address again is info@brushparty.co.uk. You can leave reviews on our Facebook page so we know how you've got on. If you've enjoyed the classes, if there's something you want to see done differently, if you've got ideas for another picture we should be painting, let us know. We are here to keep you guys entertained with painting, especially if we're going into another lockdown. We're all going to need to keep happy with some painting. So let us know, give us some feedback, and let us know, like I said, if there are any pictures you want to see being done. And most importantly, Have a really wonderful Halloween. I know it's going to be a little bit different this year to most years, but I still hope you manage to have a really, really lovely time. And I hope you're all staying safe and well. And we cannot wait to see you at another event. So keep an eye on the website. If you need any art supplies, everything we use in our classes, we always use the same paints and the same brushes. They are all available on our website as well, so you can have your brush party kit ready for every class you want to do. And all you need to do is just go to brushparty.co.uk and you can find everything on there, as well as all of our upcoming classes, because we've got loads of new Christmassy themed ones. Shouldn't say Christmas just yet, but we've got loads of Christmassy themed ones coming up. Lots of exciting things going on. So have a look on the website. Don't forget to upload some photos. I really want to see how you've got on. And we will see you at another brush party really, really soon. Guys, thank you so much for hanging out with me this morning. Have a really, really awesome evening. Don't eat too many sweets. Definitely eat lots of, I'm going to eat lots of sweets tonight. And we will see you again really, really soon. Thank you so much and happy Halloween. Bye, you guys.